Welcome to ROBOL Studio and to the sixth lecture. This one is titled Instrumentalization of Design. Instrumentarium belongs to the domain of dentistry or surgery and has been around as a depository of instruments essential to practice of the discipline. In architecture, instruments are as old as Euclid, compass, set square, French curves, and many others have been with us for a long time and has been totally essential to our discipline. Today we are witnessing instrumentalization process of totally different kind. This instrumentarium is collection of equipment and methods impacting our practice, not unlike musical instruments did the emergence of classical music in Baroque times. The growth of the modern industry, particularly computerization and advent of space exploration, and its accompanying electronic devices was important. The introduction of computer in 50s revolutionized methods of instrumentation, for it allowed simultaneous comparison and analysis of large amounts of information. At the same time, feedback systems were perfected in which data from instruments is instantaneously evaluated and used to adjust parameters affecting the whole process. Feedback systems are of course crucial to the operation of any automated process. A few days ago, we received the news that Professor Forrester of MIT, now emeritus of course, passed away, and he merits recognition. He defined the field of computer modeling and simulation. He was working in the 50s as a young teacher at MIT, where the researcher, when he developed field of system dynamics modeling that is now indispensable throughout physical and social sciences, not just in management, but also in astrophysics, biology, chemistry, and climate change. In his seminal book, World Dynamics, published in 1971, he developed global modeling concept, which examined population growth, industrialization, in a world of finite resources. He developed dependencies in this first model, treated interaction of population, economy, natural resources, food, and pollution in global context. His students wrote a few years later a very famous and best-selling book titled Limits to Growth. This was all based on his world dynamics theory. So we recognize him today and look at the MIT Digital Lab from 50s with computer, which I think took most of the room and else. Today, the dynamic map of science can be easily created from citation data, as illustrated here. This way we can visualize structure of scientific activity on a global level. Most scientific publications could be now accessed online, and scholarly web portals record detailed login data at the scale that exceeds number of all existing citations combined. This model is of course dynamic and owes a lot to Forrester. Mapping generally is not new, of course, and mapping of data is credited first to the John Snow, who was a London physician in 1854, middle of 19th century, and he was treating his cholera victims, patients, Epidemic was then rampant in London, and while visiting them, he was mapping their location uh, in an area of his practice and also indicating location of the wells. Quickly, he established dependency between cases and water sources, and that led to resolution of the problem in years to come. This is ancestor of contemporary GIS, I guess, Geographic Information System. More contemporary version is here. This dependency between travel time and geographical location and mapped and dynamically really changed the shape of France, so familiar to us. So discoveries are numerous related to this data gathering. Um, and here is one of the first studies where attempt was to position a digital device, I think early telephone, into the refuse at MIT and tracking location of the garbage, and it was evident that the garbage travels in most mysterious ways, not necessarily directly to the dump as we thought, but in this case, students realized that garbage tracked across the country several times. The embedded wireless device was tracking positioning of the campus, and then Sensible City Lab at MIT School of Architecture was a place where the data was gathered and mapped. The use of computer-controlled production tools or instruments are already available, but typically underused in construction trades, and that provides new opportunities for freedom of design, and that is innovative and adheres to construction logic at the same time, claims Gramazio Koller from ETH. Here is a project where not only the columns were fabricated out of wood sections, but also assembled by the robot. And that's very important because we frequently use numerical machines for making objects, but rarely we use for assembling for construction. This is a new field, this integration. We are looking at the Festo clip, a German robotics company who actually devised the flying machine, explained in this its kind of construction and principles, functional principles are self-evident from this clip. It was fabricated and controlled electronically using what they call principle of biomimetics, that is taking sources from nature to understand engineering problem. This is frequent in robotic industry and design, is to rely at the organic mechanics of organic objects, as we see here, how the finger informs construction of robotic arm. Today, great advances have been made, as we can see from this clip. Instrumentalization has also concept present in the philosophy of technology, and it's credited to Freenberg. He wrote in his book Transforming Technology, what human beings are and will become is decided in the shape of our tools, no less than in action of statesmen and political movements. The design of technology is thus ontological decision fraught with political consequences. That's important, political consequences. The exclusion of the vast majority from participation in this decision is profoundly undemocratic. This is a warning of some significance. We belong to the elites. Instrumentalization theory, which he was the author of, combines the social critique of technology, familiar from the philosophy of technology, with insights taken from the empirical case studies of science and technology. Applications of his theory include growing presence of Internet of Things is exemplified by this thermostat device, which is now conquering American market. Here is a short clip, which is self-explanatory.
This thermostat will make you love your thermostat. It's in millions of homes around the world. It's saved billions of kilowatt hours of energy so far. And that's just the beginning. Meet the third-generation Nest Learning Thermostat. It has a bigger, sharper screen, and it's even better at learning what you like. Just turn it up or down. It will catch on after a few days and create a personalized schedule for you. That's how the Nest Thermostat saves energy. In real homes with real families, it saved so much energy it paid for itself. To save even more, just follow the leaf. Nest even turns itself down when you leave the house. And you can control it from anywhere. You can see how much energy you use every day and how to use less. Energy companies all over the world are giving the Nest thermostat to their customers because they know it saves energy. That's the most beautiful part. The Nest Learning Thermostat programs itself, then pays for itself.
Well, Internet of Things is not without its problems, but let's look at it at quasi-design implication with this particular example where architecture relies on construction of processes that require careful planning and strictly define outcomes at every stage. Yet in nature, a million of simple social insects collectively build nests without any global coordination. Authors of this paper explore how the emergent structures can be assembled using swarms of small active robots manipulating passive building blocks in 2 dimensions. The robot swarm is based on a toy bristlebot, a simple vibrating motor mounted on top of bristles to propel the body forward. This installation test bed with 200 robots, where the orange are active robots, electronically controlled, and white are passive robots. This was presented at the Conference of Smart Geometry in Göteborg in Sweden just a few months ago. Paper exploded 2D construction processes with emergent outcomes by using swarms of robots. Behavior is programmed by changing geometric shape of both robots and blocks. The behavior of each individual robot is simple, but shape-mediated interaction with other robots and passive blocks can lead to complex patterns, for example, forming stable clusters of specific size for collective transport. The full version of this paper I published on our portal. Here, to reflect on complexity of swarm logic, is this beautiful clip. One of my recent thesis students, Piotr Baszyński, who works now for Lava actually, applied the swarm algorithm in generation of architectural design. The underlying intelligence of it was used twice. Once for planning the marketplace to anticipate this unpredictable behavior of crowds of people shopping in an open space. And a second application was trying to formalize it as a space frame structure which somehow reflects complexities of the algorithm possibilities. This condition was also explored on my entry to Milan Expo Pavilion a year ago. This was done together with few colleagues, Kaz Butelski from Kraków and Jacek Markusiewicz and Marcin Strzała. So the idea was to have a dynamic ceiling which was responsive like a field of hay to the electronically or iPad control devices which are blowing different currents of air, so it was continuously dynamic. And another example in this series of quasi-kinetic objects, in 2012, my entry for Helsinki National Library, where outside envelope was actually contained serial kinetic elements which reflected both intervention of users and changing climatic conditions. This is a sectional information which shows this summer and winter strips behavior as well as a formalism of a plan. And one more, this time the temporary arts pavilion in Hong Kong on the waterfront. This competition is exemplified by this particular clip. It was set on a turntable, but also it was folding and unfolding depending on the nature of the weather and nature of the, I guess, exhibits. This sketchy rendering shows this pavilion set against Hong Kong skyline with Andy Warhol projected paintings on a membrane of the kinetic elements of origami. Presence of information technology, especially its networking aspects, is evident in our lives. This is a picture from Hong Kong during the quite well publicized protest demonstrations of youth known as the Umbrella Revolution. We see here a sea of lights, and those lights, of course, are smartphones being raised in lieu of candles. Similar, surprisingly, a year earlier, a picture from Maidan Revolution in Kiev. Here also series of lights. Those are all iPhones or smartphones. If you are surprised by unusual vantage point, these pictures were taken from a quadrocopter, which was of course remotely controlled, and so that gives you an indication of times we live in. Another extreme from crowd are miniaturization. This is a short information about programmable nanorobots coming out of WISE Institute at Harvard University. This is an institute devoted to biologically inspired engineering. I'll let you listen to it.
A slightly larger molecule has different functionalities that you can program to go where you want, to self-assemble into structures you want, to release things, provide readouts. The question is, if we want to be able to build any kind of structure that we want, then how do we do that? We decided to focus on a particular building material, which is DNA. You're able to use DNA as a biocompatible, biodegradable building material rather than its information content. The method's called DNA origami, but in fact maybe it should be called DNA knitting, because you're really knitting a long strand of DNA into a flat surface. What we did was to extend this idea to solid three-dimensional structures by programming this sheet of DNA accordion style
into a thicker structure. So for many applications, you need a more rigid material. So a more solid building block is highly useful. If you have the ability to shape matter into exactly the right organization that you want, then you can make any kind of molecular device that you want.
And now we're making ones that when they bind one cell type, not another, they open up and trigger receptors that cause killing, for example, in cancer.
So what we built is a clamshell-like device out of DNA. Basically, it's this nanoscale DNA barrel that can hold drug payload on the inside, and then is decorated with special DNA sequences on the outside that can recognize and target cancer cells. Getting something inside the DNA that won't come out except when it's close to the cell, and then only go into the cell.
Here is a little bit more illustrations related to this DNA digital computation of nanorobotics. The next paper describes advances in robotics, in design of new robotic industrial robots. This one comes from KUKA. It's a result of the research project done by architecture faculty at Vienna Technical University. So the paper reports on use of new type of collaborative industrial robot for the process of design and assembly construction. It differs from traditional robotic configuration, and as it is a new type of collaborative safe robot, and I'll show a few more slides from this paper. In the past, the industrial robots were depending on engineers who specialized in programming them to fit the intended project. And now robot industry is moving away from traditional robotic installation with safety fences towards safe human robot collaboration, safe interaction with collaborative robot works thanks to the compliant collision detection mechanism. I will go to the clip here. What is also important, the interface is allowing creative users to intuitively program and simulate robotic arms with visual programming environment. In this case, Grasshopper is used to interface with it, and inverse kinematic model of the robot is controlled through the Grasshopper visual programming. This is pretty well self-explanatory clip, which is worth to follow. Tool is not only safe, accessible, but also extremely easy to program. Robots have been used, industrial robots, in practice, in fabrication, particularly in making things, occasionally in assembly, but not very often. It's recent here that the assembly is informed through haptic programming. Project was presented at Hanover Fair 2016. Center picture shows assembly of this space object, a wooden trellis by hand, and then the bottom clip shows assembly with help of the new KUKA robot. So it's a significant step of change, not only for robotics, but also for construction industry and for design, as it enables new version of interacting with the instrument, both in regards to the physical and digital interaction. The robot becomes a universal platform that can be adapted through software for specific tasks and implemented into existing system from cloud to BIM, building information modeling. This clip shows interface between Grasshopper and PRC, Parametric Robot Control Program plugin for Grasshopper. And one more short project, or rather installation, which is public installation in urban space in Santiago de Chile. It consists of 3 computer-controlled circular mirrors, which are placed on a rooftop and quite hidden from public. They reflect sunlight onto large nearby facades, and dots of light slowly move, drawing an elliptical patterns throughout the day. The next series of images shows construction and logic behind this particular project. I was making here a point about digital divide, which is a concept and growing recognition that high-speed wired urbanizations and those which have second-class connectivity, there's a gap resulting between those who have and those who don't. And all the advances and potential which internet has to offer, networks have to offer, is limited by, of course, accessibility by those who are not in position to invest. So this kind of summarize instrumentalization in design, perhaps quote from Antoine Picon, his book Digital Culture and Architecture, was recently published, and in a chapter called Emergence of Information Society, he wrote, confronted with massive technological change, and common temptation is to focus on the present only, as if what is happening was without roots in the past. So, in this spirit, I want to bring to your attention Ivan Sutherland, who in 1963 PhD thesis, which I published on our portal as well, wrote describing his project called Sketchpad. The Sketchpad system makes it possible for the man and computer to converse rapidly through the medium of the line drawings. And this system opens a new area of man-machine communication, wrote the person who actually formulated computer graphics, or at least its beginning 2D and 3D. To a large extent, it was found out that the usefulness of computer drawing is precisely their structured nature. And this is the end of my talk. Okay.